Welcome to the All Things Circular podcast, your gateway to the circular economy. Hosted by industry experts Victoria Darcy and Rich Bulger. Every episode is proof that circularity isn't just good for the planet. It's a smart business decision. Our mission is simple: to empower, to inform, and to show you how to make the circular economy work for you.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of All Things Circular. Rich, this is a really special one. It's just me and you.
I know, and I'm here with my favorite person, Vic Darcy, in Vegas again.
Again. People that know me know that Vegas is not my favorite place, but I am with my favorite people.
So if you've tuned into the first 32 episodes...
Can you believe we've got 32 episodes out?
I cannot, but the times that we've been together are either in Manchester or Vegas, and there's been no in-between with us yet.
There's no substitute for Manchester, though, let's be honest.
Well, I tell you what, we are going to have Belgium coming up pretty soon.
We are. And actually, part of what we're going to talk about today is the evolution of all things circular because, I mean, Rich, you're a pro hand at this. It's going to be my first kind of go around the rodeo, but we're teaching a masterclass.
We are. This is the very first time for you being a guest facilitator for the All Things Circular Masterclass that Peter and I have been teaching all over the planet. So I'm really excited to host one of those with you.
I think just before we go into the content of today's episode, which is actually pretty cool because we're going to do a bit of a recap over some of our guests and particularly the myths that have been busted. But Rich, why don't you explain to some of our listeners the other parts of what we do? Because the masterclass is an absolute critical part of what All Things Circular is all about.
Well, what started out as a podcast and an idea to go through and enlighten and educate through this medium has evolved into other things that we've been working on. As you know, Peter is one of the best researchers and strategists that we've ever met. We've written the book, Going Circular. The book turned into a masterclass. We've taught the masterclass on circular logistics and platforms all over the world because there really is the cart before the horse. You have to leverage reverse logistics to assess cosmetic and functional to move it to the next part of the process. And when Peter read the book and he realized how much reverse and circular logistics related to platform strategy, he asked if we could teach a masterclass. And so far we've done Hong Kong, we've done Barcelona, we've done Amsterdam, we've done Vegas a couple times, we've done some special in-depth strategy sessions for Fortune 100 companies.
No.
And there seems to be a really big appetite for a place with subject matter experts to have a conversation. And a few folks have called asking for help, and we've been able to leverage our network to find advisory services as well as tackle just some of the special projects and make sure that we're listening to what our audience is caring about and just being relentlessly curious to try to go through and find answers.
I think what's brilliant about the masterclass, and I've been really privileged to sit as a delegate a couple of times, is the real complexities that people don't understand about circularity. Because I'm actually going to paraphrase you here. Reverse logistics is not forward logistics, and it's not forward logistics for a very, very good reason is you don't know what you're going to get.
That's right. One of the questions that we ask people in certain conferences, because every conference has its own flavor depending upon the show, like the ITAD Summit, we're going to talk about a few different things than we talked about at Mobile Disrupt. And Mobile Disrupt was different than Circularity, which is more sustainability focused. But I like to ask a question. If you are in reverse logistics, how did you get trained? Were you thrown into the deep end? Did you shadow with someone? Was there a formal program? Or are you still trying to figure it out? And we've been asking this now through some interactive technology that we use for our programs. And I have not had a single person yet say they've taken a formal class. And if you go through and think about how reverse logistics is one half of the circular journey of a product as it moves from one owner to the next, forget about the economics of it, but just the fact that no one knows how to do it. And what these master classes are really highlighting is everyone's trying their own different strategy, but there's no unified front. One of the reasons is because there's no one within companies that are trained on this process, and no one really knows how to go through and develop programs for it.
And I think that's because until very recently, people haven't cared.
Right. No, if you go through the National Retail Federation has become one of our biggest allies and advocates. Scott Case wrote the testimonial in my book, but using their numbers, the retail economy in the U.S. generated $5.2 trillion in revenue.
Stop there. $5.2 trillion.
That is more than my bank account will ever be.
Is it as big as Elon Musk's?
I think it's a bit bigger than Musk's. But if you look at sales, 5.2 trillion in sales, and then you look at the impact of unwanted returns where someone bought $5.2 trillion worth of stuff and they said, I got the wrong thing. I want my money back. That cost U.S. retailers last year $890 billion.
Okay, stopping you again. $5.2 trillion of sales resulted in how many?
$890 billion.
$890 billion of returns. Now, do you know how many of those returns were actually put to a second life?
No. And that's not a very well understood topic. I do know that the size of the secondary market here in the U.S. and unwanted returns will play a part of it. Trade-ins, circular sales programs, lease products as a service also fall into the 800 billion and rising number, since platforms make it so easy to match used supply with used demand. And if you put both of those numbers together, call it 900 billion plus 800 billion, you're talking $1.7 trillion of a $5.2 trillion economy directly impacted from reverse, and there's no training on it.
But these numbers are staggering. And just to maybe contextualize this for our listeners, when I worked at Cisco, when John Chambers was the CEO, he used to stand up on the stage and say, let's find the next $1 billion market. Let's just find the next $1 billion market. And we're stood here looking at potentially, $1 trillion market. And that's conservative based on those figures.
Yeah, and if you go through, and I'm sure unwanted returns are going to start tapping that pretty soon. But if you go to 2018 and look at the same data set, it was in the $300 billion range.
Wow.
So as people migrated, particularly with COVID, when there was a rapid shift of how people bought, not being able to put your hands on things in a retail store, having to bracket, buy 3 to find the one that you like, send back the 2 that you want and keep the one that you like, generates 2 returns and 2 different shipping transactions. The in-store return rate is about 8 and change percent. Online, it's north of 17%. So as these companies have been going through and just saying, we'll wash all of our returns out in the numbers. It's a small number. It's too much of a hassle. We really don't want to pay attention to it and distract from sales. As the e-commerce returns have started to rise, it's like a frog in a pot of boiling water where it's just going up gradually. And now companies are realizing that they're losing a significant portion of their net profits by not keeping an eye on returns, which is why the National Retail Federation made a strategic move to buy the Reverse Logistics Association in order to get access to resources and training to help convince the business leaders and help show business leaders how successful return management and circular programs can be done.
You see, I'm going to take that to another different direction because, yes, there's money to be made from it. You've proved it. We know that. But the other thing is, let's look at the resources that have been taken to produce that product, whether that be tech. 75% of emissions are in the production of the product, certainly in tech. And let's look at fashion. We've been lucky enough to interview a couple of people that come from that. So it's actually more than the value. It's actually now looking at what we're doing as a global community when we're pulling resources, not only in the materials, in the mining, but in the production and in the shipping.
That's right. No, and now with especially tariffs and the end of the de minimis exception here in the U.S., where anything under $800 wasn't tariff before but is now, all of this cross-border e-commerce business that has been flowing into the States or flowing from one country into another country is now undergoing some pressure that's resulting in a shift in business direction and really how you have to go through and manage returns.
Yeah. But I also think now one of the things and one of the points of doing this podcast is for us to really, it's a war cry, isn't it? To turn around and say, as a consumer, whether you're a business consumer or a personal consumer, is look at the behaviors of the organization that you are purchasing from. Are they operating responsibly? Are they actually out there in the market saying, okay, we appreciate, 17% in retail returns come in. What do we do with them? Do we resell them or do we dispose of them? Because one of the things that we'll talk about, and actually I've actually got a list of myths that have been busted, is that most returns aren't defunct.
That's right. And a lot of them are still, Brenda, we were just looking at pictures of pallets of things that were manufactured, shipped, and they just never made it to their final destination. So they wound up back in the possession of the post office, who was liquidating those, just like an airline would liquidate lost luggage on a plane or lost items on a plane, just trying to get whatever value they can. Companies have got to start really paying attention.
Yes, they do.
To where their children are going.
Yes.
And having proactive solutions across multiple geographies to go through and keep the money that they worked hard to make.
Yep.
By having sound circular strategies.
Yeah.
I can say that I'm starting to hear terms like circular logistics a lot more now. Maybe it's Siri listening to me and just feeding me the things that I want to hear or something along those lines. But companies are starting to pay attention, and I am starting to hear people dialogue who their second, third, and fourth customer is and how to go through and understand their buying motives the same way they understand the buying motives of the first customer.
Which I love. This is a brilliant segue. So actually, Rich, I'm going to do a bit of a quiz for you. Uh-oh. How much were you paying attention to our episode? So,
are you going to ask me what you were wearing our first episode? Because I had no idea.
I wouldn't be that mean. But I am going to give you a few of the myths that have been busted along our journey.
Okay.
And I wonder if you can guess who busted the myth.
Ooh, okay.
Here we go. All right. Okay. You should get this one, actually. Most returns are faulty.
Most returns are faulty.
Oh, he's thinking.
I am thinking on that one.
It was an RLA one. I'll give you that clue.
Was it Tony Schroeder?
It was. Yeah. It was. So Tony turned around and said that 90% of returns aren't broken. 90%. And again, if you just go back to what we were discussing on the basis that people aren't dealing with those returns as a sales opportunity, that's 90% of working product is unnecessarily put into either recycling or waste. It's quite shocking.
That's exactly right. In my opinion, a lot of those returns are the result of a sales failure, where an expectation wasn't communicated, or a customer bought something that they didn't need, or in the fact of online purchases, the only way that they could go through and truly figure out what they need is to touch and feel. And that experience just hasn't been addressed online yet in a meaningful way.
Let's just link this back to the masterclass as well. One of the exercises that Rich and Peter do in the masterclass is they've managed to get their hands on some returned product. And bearing in mind, we've done this at the RLA, that's the Reverse Logistics Association. We're currently at the ITAD Summit. We're with professionals that are in this industry. How often do people agree on the grading of product that comes back?
Ooh, I don't want to spoil the point of the exercise, but the point of the exercise is to go through and show people how a table of really smart people can go through to their best of their ability and create a communication strategy that confuses customers because everyone's trying to do their own thing.
And confuses themselves in the process.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I've got another one for you. In fact, I'll give you this one because this one was a great one. It was one of my favourite episodes. So this was with DHL.
Okay.
And I love
April
this.
Wiley.
April, she's brilliant. But what's great here, so Rich and I come from different disciplines. Rich comes from logistics in the main, although you spent half of your career actually in a sales role. But
right.
Your major discipline has been reverse logistics. I've purely from sales, not that you can tell, but
well, I spent half my life in sales.
It's 100% of mine. April said reverse logistics isn't a sales role. That was the myth that she busted. And it totally is.
It is 100% a sales role, especially in modern supply chain. Most people want it to be, I like to call reverse logistics success defined 20 years ago as being an elevator repair person, where the only time you ever meet an elevator repair person is if you're stuck on an elevator. So something,
hopefully never.
If something breaks, then they know who you are. So the goal is not to have anything break. But now, since there's such pressure to go through and claw back the circularity delta of what you sold a product for, and if someone returns it, how can you claw back maximum revenue off of that return instead of just letting it leak away?
Yeah.
And going through and building circular programs, circular sales programs that involve circular logistics to move the things. Now, reverse logisticians need to understand what something looks and feels like and how customers buy, and make sure that they're developing consistent processes to move it. So I found a lot of success in logistics just because I understood how to sell.
So I'm actually going to quote April here. She said, she flipped the narrative, proving that modern logistics leaders need to sell the circular vision, not just manage the boxes.
That's right. And I think we are involved in a conversation change. Suppliers, investors, particularly the new generation employees, are expecting their companies to go through and have a structured process to go through and make sure things stay in use, and if not, responsibly recycled.
Yeah.
And I think where it's really going to hit is when those younger generations, and I'm not talking about Gen Xers and Boomers, I'm talking about millennials and Gen Z who are aware of their carbon footprint and are actively taking steps to go through and reduce it. Their buying motives are more on purpose over price. And when they start voting with their wallet, companies are going to change.
Oh, hallelujah to that, right? It's great. And one thing that we found during our podcast journey is we've come across some really funky tech, haven't we, that does this?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And I love DHL's new process of being able to, very quickly identify the best route to return that product.
Very American of you, Vic. Vex is wearing off on you.
Hope not too much. All right, okay, I'm going to give you another one. Reverse logistics is a cost center. That was a myth.
Oh, that was one of our first ones.
I'll give you a clue. It was an insurer.
Oh, that would have been Kimberly Allison.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And again, Kimberly was amazing. She was saying that, which is true. Reverse logistics and actually the resale of product on its second life is so margin rich. And if you ask me, what gets up my nose is when people refuse to either believe it or accept it, because it is, because the margin in the creation of that product and the sale in its first instance it's done. Yep. By the time it's on its second journey, the margin is by far increased.
Absolutely. And one of the great things about the evolution of our platform in our community is Peter Evans and the contributions he has with writing papers and going through and providing education. And he's been really big on the circularity delta. If you haven't checked out his white paper, it's on our website. I definitely recommend you check it out.
Now, just on that, Peter was co-chair of the MIT platform, MIT in Boston, and he recently did a presentation where the circularity delta was first discussed. It's a new thing that he's coined.
Yeah, it's a simple way of going through and looking at a common problem. So the circularity delta concept initially was, well, if you go through and you spend $10,000 to buy something, when you no longer want that, how much of that $10,000 can you get back?
Yes.
Now, the circularity delta also exists in other parts of the supply chain. If you're a manufacturer who sells something to a distributor, or a distributor that sells something back to a customer, when they decide to return it, the circularity delta could be, well, if you sold $10,000 worth of stuff and you gave customer $10,000 of it back, how much can you make by selling that thing to the next customer?
Yes.
Because if your cost is $500 to sell a $1,000 thing and you just write it down to zero, well, then you're taking 100% loss.
Yeah.
So if you can go through and figure out how to go through and through circular programs, move it to a next owner and recoup some of the value, that's a different discipline.
Yes, it is.
The circularity delta also exists in the secondary supply chain when manufacturers or retailers are trying to figure out how can I go through and make back as much of the margin as possible. If you're someone that's working in the secondary market, buying those things to match it to the next customer, the delta, you're trying to find a positive. If you spend $10,000 on returned equipment, how can you turn that $10,000 into 12 or 15? Because outside of having access to that revenue and a reason why to match use supply with use demand, the secondary market breaks.
Yes.
So circularity delta means different people to different things in the life cycle. And it's been a wonderful learning that I've had over the course of our journey.
It's like an abacus, isn't it, for circularity?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to this.
Yeah, there are. Now, interesting, you hit on it slightly then, is how the sale happens in, with what we do, with dealing with that second customer and that second sale. And we were privileged when we were in Vegas last time to be joined by Dan Main from BidPath, who's an auction site. And the myth that he busted were auctions are outdated, and they're really not. It's a competitive weapon.
Oh, absolutely. It's a liquidation outlet. And not everything is going to or needs to be sold in auction. You can sell directly to customers, and what doesn't go directly to customers needs to have different paths. So there's been some really cool platforms and technology that we've had. But let me flip this question to you.
Oh, no, yeah, I have the data.
I know. So with your path, and something that's common when someone's lived in a company for as long as you live within Cisco,
I did.
Is, well, we're talking about fashion. We're not talking about networking equipment. How could you possibly understand what's going on in a sporting goods store when your background has only been in technology? You actually hit me with that when I came to Cisco, and you're like, Rich, this isn't mobile.
I did.
So talk to me about the Venn diagram of what you've seen. What are similarities? What are differences? Is there more in the middle? Is every industry really unique and different? What are your thoughts on scaling outside of tech?
I think for me, and it's both a myth I want to bust, and it is probably my biggest bugbear. The people.
Wait, what is a bugbear for those who don't speak UK?
Annoyance. It gets on my nerves. I find in all industries the people that stand in the way of the manufacturers, because they don't understand the second customer. I would give them license to say they're frightened of the second customer, but then I'd take it away and say they actually disrespect the second customer, because they believe that by selling something twice, they're going to take revenue from their first customer. And I have seen that across industries and across our conversations. And I think the myth that I would bust is your second customer isn't your first customer. There may be a certain amount of crossover, but that second customer is that whole different loop of customer. They have different buying desires. They have different price points. They're still buying your brand, by the way, right? Just because they didn't buy it new doesn't mean they're not bought into you as a brand. They may not have the budget. They may be conscious of sustainability, conscious of that buying behaviors of being that second customer. But what I see time and time again is manufacturers, whether they be tech, fashion, automotive is the one that doesn't actually, is they not only resist it, they fight against it.
Yeah, and I'm going to see your myth and raise it with an enlightenment.
Okay.
Because this is one that not a lot of companies understand, but you're kind of leading us there. Today's customer 2, the person who wants to buy used, could be tomorrow's customer 1. If you go through and you take someone who is buying something used because they're a college student just struggling to go through and keep the lights on, so they're willing to buy, a secondhand digital camera or iPhone to go through and make a call. As they progress through their career, they will become loyal to the brand. So going through and getting people hooked on something that they can afford used could be the catalyst for them being a new customer later on in the future.
Oh, 100%. But I'm going to take that again in a different direction. So when I left Cisco and I started up by myself, I knew I was coming into the circular economy. And we have a phrase, this is going to be another Britishism. You eat your own dog food. I don't know if that translates to American. In other words, if I'm going to work...
No, we actually use that.
Okay, great. Okay, it crosses the Atlantic. So when I started out, I bought a refurbished iPhone. And Apple, get this perfectly. I could go onto the Apple website, I could search for refurbished, I could search the model, and I could buy my iPhone, which I did. And then I went to try and buy a laptop. And somebody had said to me, get the Microsoft Surface Pro. That's what you want. I tried and tried and tried to buy a refurbished one, and I couldn't find one. I went to Back Market in the end, and Back Market would sell me one that was 3 generations old. And then the version that you would have here is Surprise. We have Currys. I went to Currys and they had an offer on the brand new one that was released in 2 weeks' time, cheaper than the 3rd generation one on Back Market. So what did I do? I waited 2 weeks and I bought the new one. But I tried so hard to buy the refurbished one and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's all about supply and demand in the secondary market. The reason why it was more expensive is because that's what they had to spend in order to acquire that supply. So whenever there's a drop in price, but the next new thing drops and it goes from $1,200 to $1,000, there's an immediate impact to the secondary market because it moves with the price of the first. So when you have those moments of shift where a new thing is coming out and there's a price change, the people who had acquired the 3rd generation in this case had a strike price that they paid. And when the new one came out at a lower price, they had to try to go through and recoup. But eventually, when you go through and you make the decision to purchase the new thing, the laws of supply and demand come into play. And the price for the used things has to drop, and people that are holding the bag at a higher price will eventually have to take the hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we also interviewed wonderful Ben Daniels from Foxway. Ben was a great guest.
The coolest hair that's ever been on this podcast, by the way.
I'm not saying something with you and me sitting here. We do try.
I didn't have hair envy. I had hair respect.
He's got fabulous hair. And actually, we need to get Ben back.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful guy.
He walked by the ITAD Summit.
He's here, actually. So Ben's myth was if it boots, it's ready to resell, which I loved. Now, Ben gave us a great example about two laptops, and said if you have 2 laptops in front of you, one looks like it's been thrown around, scratched, whatever, and the other one looks pristine. Which one are you going to want? And of course, naturally, everyone's going to want the one that's pristine until you open it, and the one that's pristine doesn't work, but the one that's maybe a little bit cosmetically imperfect works perfectly well. Well, then you want the one that works, right?
Well, and I would also say that depends on who you want to buy it for. I love my 2015 Dodge Ram, but this year I'm going to have to get another one.
You're actually going to upgrade the Dodge?
Well, my son is turning 16 this year, and I've taken good care of my truck. I love my truck, and there's not a better car I can get for him than the one that I had. But that car has been loved. It's got some dings and dents in it. It's got a few miles on it. He doesn't need the new thing.
He doesn't know.
My 12-year-old, who is one of the best humans I know, really good heart, takes care of his things, but he's also 12. So when we get him computers or we get him phones, getting him something that's brand new isn't going to stay in that condition, so it's kind of a waste. So for my son, I would choose the thing that has more wear at a lower price. Throw a case on it, I could skin it and put stickers on it and make it look the way that he would want it to look. But people understand sacrificing price for cosmetic tolerance, and sometimes there's a market for that tolerance.
Oh, I completely agree. When my brother, if he actually listens to this podcast, he would laugh. He failed his driving test 5 times. My brother's 2 years older than me. I was coming up behind him, and my dad had one car, and like your Dodge Ram, it was, a bit old. And he basically pushed us in competition and said, whoever passes their driving test first gets the car. And my brother then stole my driving instructor, who I had interviewed, by the way, got his test 2 weeks before me and passed on his 5th go around, and he got the car. Still furious about it.
I failed my first driver's test because I was driving through a subdivision and I hit a cat, ran out, and I stopped. I love cats. It's my thing.
You've got a cat as well.
We got 3 cats, Maverick, Goose, and Cupcake. But I hit this cat, and the cat was toast. And I'm in a subdivision, so I put it in park, and I get out, and I'm upset. And the guy stays in the car, and I get back in the car, and he's like, all right, you didn't pull up to the side. You didn't put on your blinker and pull off to the right. You didn't put on your four-way flashers.
So you didn't fail because you killed a cat. You failed because you didn't follow the due process after killing the cat.
Yeah, he gave me every list of things that I didn't do in this wide-open neighborhood street after a cat ran out in between two cars, and I failed my first driver's test. So your brother and I can bond over that.
Yeah, he fell, Paul.
In addition to him having a birthday right after mine.
So should I work this out? Yeah, Rich, because it's actually Rich's birthday next weekend. Okay, right. Couple more myths to bust. Okay, let's see if you get this one. Recycling is free.
There's a phrase, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
There you go. I love this one.
Yeah.
Because people think, and again, we've seen this time and time again, well, they just come and pick it up. I don't need to deal with it. It's dealt with. You're the product.
That's exactly right. Our friend and producer extraordinaire, Damien, put us on the phone with someone. And he was like, yeah, this company will come, pay $600 and just pick it up, and they take it away. And we're like, how much is that stuff worth?
Exactly.
Are you really getting a favor on that one? But the secondary market will take advantage of the inefficiencies of the upstream supply. So if you don't know the stuff that you're giving away for free or selling for $600, so that $600 purchaser can go through and say, well, you're giving it away, but I'll give you $600. You think you're getting a better deal. So knowing the value of your product and the circularity delta of what you have is something that companies really need to pay attention to now.
Well, again, I'm going to take that in a slightly different direction. As you know, one of my passions is looking at critical minerals, critical metals. And something that is in everybody's drawers is copper. And people don't realize that although copper is not scarce in terms of the Earth's crust, getting it out is getting harder. The quality of the copper that we're pulling out at the moment is degraded compared to what we were. And I came across a customer of mine, actually, who was throwing copper cable in the trash. And I mean, we're talking a large organization who had no idea, A, of the value of that copper, but B, the fact that that is a scarce metal right now.
That's right. No, and you see that stuff all the time. Magnets is becoming big, with the tariff wars that are going on and retaliatory threats to say, well, cool, we won't buy your stuff, but we also won't ship you the materials that you need to make it yourself. Urban mining and finding the material to make tomorrow's things might come from the things that have already been made. And it's an evolving process, and one that I really want to try to dig into.
Oh, me
as we
too.
move forward.
Me too, because magnets are neodymium and dysprosium. Check me out with my chemist knowledge. Less than 1% is recycled.
I had my mom's senior year high school chemistry. I got a D- in her class.
Your mom taught you.
I mean, it was a gift because I'm pretty sure I failed that class.
All right, last one for this episode. My actions don't matter. Now, you didn't record this one.
Okay, my actions don't matter.
It was fashion.
Wasn't Melissa McDermott, because we weren't able to get her on.
No, it was Zahara for In the Loop. Now, Zahara has got some wonderful tech, but, she said that, she gave us a stat, which was wonderful, that household consumption makes up to 60% of emissions. So your actions do matter. And I think this is a great place to kind of leave this episode, because one thing that All Things Circular is about is intent. And the one thing that we want to do is to inspire. Make a change, be the change, because that one thing that you change may inspire somebody else to make the change. And the collective power of change will change everything.
All right. Well, what I am excited for is the next 30 episodes that we're going to create. This is going to start a series where we are at the ITAD Disposition Summit here in Las Vegas. So we're going to have some friends that are going to come and join us. And Vic, you and I have a pretty good road show coming up where we'll be together again on your side of the pond.
Yes, Barcelona.
Yeah. And
not Barcelona,
Berlin.
no, we're Belgium.
Yep. Belgium and then Berlin. So
yes.
we've got a lot of a lot of good things coming up. So make sure you like, subscribe. We're accessible on LinkedIn. It's our love language. I know it's yours and mine. So if there's something you want to hear about, don't be afraid to reach out, but we will see you as we make more content.
Wonderful. Well, Rich, thank you so much for the journey so far. I think we're 34 in. Here's to the next 34.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Please head over to allthingscircular.com to learn more.